will likely delay the start of the next school and college year. The state exam won't take place in June due to COVID-19 and will instead be held in late July or early August. Thomas Byrne, the party's education spokesperson, expects the usual September academic start times to be pushed back.
This is a completely unprecedented situation, and I know I was talking to some of the university presidents, it's probably 3 weeks ago now, this came on, but they were open to any possible delays if it meant that things would start and if it meant we could get things done, obviously in a healthy way. So there may well be delays to the college year, and obviously I think there may well be delays to the school year.
And in other news, a man in his 40s has been killed in a two-car crash in County Kildare. It happened in Leakslip in the early hours of this morning, and Gardaí are appealing for witnesses. Adrian Harman reports.
At around 9:50 this morning, Gardaí were alerted to the two-car crash on Easton Road in Leakslip. The driver of one of the vehicles, a man in his 40s, was pronounced dead at the scene. A man in his 60s who was driving the other car has been taken to Connolly Hospital in Blanchardstown in Dublin with non-life-threatening injuries. Forensic collision investigators are currently at the scene and the road is closed with local diversions in place.
And Paul McCartney's lyrics for the hit song Hey Jude have sold at auction for 9 times their original estimate. The notes, written in 1968, went for about €850,000 at the sale in New York. It's 3:02.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to the AA. To help in these challenging times, we've reduced the cost of our home insurance. Get our lowest price at the AA.ie.
Dry and sunny most places with some light breezes. Top temperatures between 15 and 20 degrees, warmest in the south. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Yeah, you're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. Do you recognise that? 53106 for your text messages. Italia 90 is our World Cup year focus this afternoon with Daniel McDonnell of the Irish Independent and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Also streaming now as well, so you can check out our streams on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. At Off the Ball as our handle on Twitter. Get in touch with your memories of Italia 90 if you're old enough. It's even funny that Neil and Will earlier on in the news round are not old enough to remember it at the time, but they're old enough almost to remember being in Italia 90 because it changed the nation. And lads, it was Conor Houlihan's quote. I missed Italia 90. I was in Italy at the time. I remember myself, I was lucky enough to be 11 years of age at the time, and my mother splashing out. We didn't have much money at the time. I don't think many families did. On that kind of those triangles and that Opel 1990 new jersey and a Bermuda shorts. And lads, I think you were old enough to remember it at the time as well. And over the next couple of hours, we're going to have a great chat about Italia 90. Already getting some really, really funny stories in on 53106 and on Twitter. We're going to take Ireland for the first hour and then talk about the rest of the tournament between 4 and 5. But take it away, guys.
Yeah, I would probably say that I don't remember any of Euro 88, John. So this was my first tournament that I felt part of. Quite vividly remember the Scalacci goal and just the whole house kind of being just immersed in this horror that we were going out of the World Cup, considering the fact that we were so competitive all along. Looking back on it now, looking back on the film earlier on, this World Cup pretty much, apart from a bad final, and lots of the World Cup finals probably didn't live up to the rest of the World Cup, this World Cup just seemed to have absolutely everything. The visceral hatred of the game between the Netherlands and West Germany as it was at the time. Gaza, and obviously what happened to him in the semi-final, getting that second yellow card. Even looking back on Gaza, getting a really, really horrible tackle by Brahma, the German left back, and getting up and basically applauding him, having already been booked. Gaza showing this unbelievable sportsmanship for a fellow who got his fair share kicking as well. Obviously Argentina, Diego Maradona coming up against the West Germans in the final, and Ireland for the first time being there. At the time I didn't realise, that the football we played was probably an assault on the senses for maybe the purists in the football world. We were there, we were competitive against really, really good teams. I remember just a massive, massive party. What was I, 6 years of age at the time, 7 years of age at the time, and I just remember the absolute buzz of it. And I suppose one thing that I would take from it this morning is how much I am absolutely buzzing for this new Irish team under Stephen Kenny, but primarily how much I want to see football again.
Yeah, Daniel, it's funny, like Euro 88 was a bit of a surprise in the way we qualified with Scotland beating Bulgaria, but we put it up to the two finalists. Russia we should have beaten, and Holland we should have drawn against, and Holland won it against Russia in the final, the Soviet Union at the time. And then in the qualifiers, we didn't score for the first three games, but Lansdowne Road back then was an absolute fortress. We won 5 on the trot, beat Hungary and Northern Ireland, who'd been to the previous World Cup, and it was quite a comfortable qualification actually for the World Cup, and we were going there.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, like, just to go and win in Malta, John Aldridge just had to figure out how to score for Ireland, which was obviously a story at the time. But yeah, like the qualification for World Cup 1990, I think you nearly need to be there for it to be ingrained in your brain as such. You need to almost look it up. Like, you remember the Alan McLaughlin one for 4 years later, and Gary McKay and what that symbolised, and in latter years it's a bit of a different story with playoffs and whatnot, but 90 is the one where the campaign itself almost gets lost in the memory, aside from what the Spain game and the own goal and what the Michel own goal, and beyond that, like, it's more the tournament that is the 1990 experience. And yeah, I'm the same age as Johnny. I was 7 going on 8. I do remember bits of 88. I remember most of 90 in terms of, I can remember where I was for, I think, all of the Ireland games, with the exception of the Egypt one, which is probably fitting. I might have gone outside during that one if it was that bad.
I'm the same as that, Dan. I can't remember that game at all.
Yeah, it was on a Sunday, lads. I remember being on a Sunday, and it was more famous for the Eamon Dunphy rant, I suppose, rather than the actual issue at the time. We were getting some tweets and texts in here. Paul Madden, my memories of half the class, the primary school in Clane, had Packy Bonner jerseys after the grey one. That's after the Romania shootout. And we all wore the goalkeeper gloves everywhere. Trevor Slattery travelled with my dad to stay with family friends in Rome for the quarter-final against Italy. Incredible atmosphere. Didn't leave the stadium for about 2 hours afterwards, such was the sing-song. Phelan Warren, the night we drew with the Dutch, this was in Palermo, I started singing ballads in a small DJ marquee in the square in Terracini, and I was soon randomly joined by Brian Warfield of the Wolf Tones as the On the One Road was sung by a few thousand delighted paddies. That was epic. And it was quite funny when I watched that Amazon, that official movie, the soccer shootout movie. Nearly instantly, they talk about the Irish, que sera, sera. They're following a fan from Dublin, and that they matched the Brazilians for support. And I think Ireland wanted to be different to other supporters. There was the reason why England were put down to Cagliari, Sicily and Sardinia was because of the threat of hooliganism, and our supporters were just this breath of fresh air at the World Cup.
I suppose you were coming out of the... Sorry, Dan, yeah.
Yeah, like it is. Sorry, Johnny, but like, it is something that you would be envious, I think, of people who are telling stories of, I guess, being in their whatever, 20s, 30s, 40s at the time, whatever it was, that were actually doing the sort of more authentic budget World Cup experience. And it does come across, and as I said, we did watch back the Amazon film there, and the depiction of the Irish team is interesting within that, because it's probably a reflection of how the Irish team was perceived by the outside world at the point. The supporters are brilliant. Their football may be a bit harder on I think Edward Woodward, the actor, is the he's the voiceover, and the description of the Irish formation at one time was that it was 10 defenders, 10 midfielders, and 10 attackers, and then Packy Bonner behind them, i.e. they were just sort of this mob who went around together, hunting in packs or whatever, and style was way down the list. And even there was a reference at one point, I think, in that video to, while Ireland didn't have the individual brilliance to win games, yet there was obviously some pretty good individuals in that Irish team, but the way in which things operate at the time, they weren't necessarily encouraged to show that. But yet, at the same time, and it's interesting, you had Stephen Kenny on earlier, and I know he wasn't a big fan of Ireland around that time or their style. Yeah, at the same time, that to me doesn't diminish the nostalgia value of the moment, the competition itself. It was like a hugely symbolic moment in the history of this country. And I mean, I still feel lucky that at least I can remember some of it. I mean, there are, as you said, you mentioned the lads earlier, people, 30 younger now, people even in their early 30s who miss out on this. And I'm not sure if we'll ever really have as innocent a sporting experience again, that even if we did have massive success, I think it will always be different to this. I don't think it'll ever be as authentic as the joy that the nation experienced the first time. And I'll never get sick of looking at the videos and the scenes and the crowd shots of it.
Yeah, it's something that really united the country, and it kind of since then and now even today, and that's why, speaking to Stephen Kenny earlier on, you can get the interview on offtheball.com on our podcast network and also on YouTube. It really is the biggest show in town. When the Republic of Ireland team are playing well, it's the biggest show in town, and that's why Japan and Korea was, and that's why Roy Keane and Saipan was such a huge issue. And maybe until now, with the way we reacted as a nation, as a one nation with this terrible coronavirus pandemic, we haven't maybe seen unity since 1990. And just some of the text in here. John Peavoy won a trip on the Old Century Radio for a week to the Egypt and Holland games. Left Dublin the morning after my final UL exams and flew to Palermo. Stayed in a hotel in Messina for the week. Remember each morning walking into town from the hotel with a mechanic from Dublin. He was a hugely funny character, just used to sing one cornetto at the top of his voice, and the local kids followed him around like a Pied Piper to the local ice cream shop where he'd buy gelato for everybody, 20 or 30 kids. Also another text in here, went to Italia 90. We were staying in Naples. We had to drive half the length of Italy to get a ferry across to Sicily, then the full way across to Sicily to Palermo for the Egypt and Holland game. It took 9 hours each way, had no tickets, ended up getting a ticket off Dutch fans for the Dutch end. Was apprehensive as they had a bad reputation in their own national league. However, the Dutch fans were brilliant and were coming up to me at half-time to get their photos taken with me as the lone Irishman in the Dutch end. Great 1-1 result as both the Dutch and Irish went through. Remember the Dutch fans marching out of the stadium behind their own brass band. Great night. That is from Declan. And it's funny, lads, I think there's a few things here. The team was very much set. It was Bonner in goal. It was Chris Morris. It was Steve Staunton. It was McCarthy and Moran in defence. It was Mcgrath and Townsend midfield. You Kevin Sheedy and Ray Houghton on the wings. And then you John Aldridge and Tony Cascarino or Niall Quinn up front. Jack Charlton was very clear about how he wanted to play. Not easy on the eye, but he was very clear about it. He went to the Mexico 86 World Cup, saw that maybe there was a bit of space behind the defences and said, we're going to play this pressure game. And a lot of countries didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, the style of play that we had at that time, John, obviously it wouldn't have aged very well, particularly looking back now. If you watch back some of the games, even our more celebrated games, the 90 minutes long, it'd be hard not to be searching for your phone to be on something else because, there wasn't a lot happening. But I would look at it in another way as well. In 1990, Ireland had an unbelievable record in qualification, as you referenced. Really, really hard to beat at home. Brilliant defensive record. And to be honest, if the country thought it was normal to be beating Spain at home and to be drawing 1-1 against the Netherlands, drawing against England, pushing Italy quite hard, we were very hard to play against. And I think the country had a right to kind of say, well, so what if we don't really play a great style? Because at that time, if you looked at the players we had, it probably was a little bit suited to us to play that way because we had target men up front. And, the modern game, Stephen Kenny was on with you earlier, and, he has this vision of how Ireland are going to play, and I'm really excited by that. But if every country plays like Manchester City or every club plays like Manchester City, basically you'll get found out quickly enough. And I think Ireland under Jack were found out after a while. Back in those days, 1990, going into 1992 even, and even getting to obviously Euro 1988, we were very, very hard to play against. And for a while, I think, other teams absolutely hated playing against us, and maybe after a while they eventually found us out because we didn't evolve. And I think teams have to evolve over time. So looking back, we were very, very hard to beat. And my overwhelming memory of those years in general was that I always expected that we were going to score an equaliser or we were going to be very, very close to getting something out of a game. We were so hard to beat. We had an unbelievable attitude, and there was just this inner belief, I think, among fans and among the team themselves that there was always going to be a chance, was always going to be a goal, even if it was that horrible, horrible goal that Niall Quinn got from a dreadful, dreadful mistake by the Dutch keeper. Whatever way it was, whether it was a penalty, and we kind of bored our way to the quarterfinals in that tournament. But there was an incredible self-belief, and the line about Con Houlihan, absolutely brilliant line. I'm just trying to imagine being somebody of a certain age, coming out of Ireland in the recession in the 80s, having enough money to go to Italy for a week or two. This was probably mind-boggling for a lot of Irish people at that time who wouldn't have been able to afford to go on holidays abroad. To do it for Ireland's first World Cup in a country where was, a real football mad country in these beautiful stadia all over a football mad country compared to the nonsense of Qatar in a couple of years. This was proper football homeland. And I would say the Irish fans over there who were at the Italian game never saw anything like that before. And we were a massive part of that. I know the narrator, said afterwards, although the Irish had been knocked out, the party was only starting. And I'm not a big fan of that stereotype, but we brought an awful lot to that World Cup. And Italy probably, as much as I remember, Italy knew they'd been in a game when they beat us 1-0 as well.
Eamon on Twitter, our first night in Rome, walking through deserted streets, Italy were playing their opening game, then a roar that echoed through the streets. People appearing on balconies chanting, Italia, Italia. We could hear that roar and chant again weeks later in the Olimpico. David Moore, I watched the group stages in a pub called Charlton's Bar in Santa Ponza with two good mates and had the pleasure of getting arrested for mooning to cops on the street after a game. Those were the days, okay. Ray on Twitter, Ireland should have gotten to the semis. The Dutch should have beaten Germany. David Platt, the best England player by miles. England-Cameroon, the best game. Mcgrath midfield, a masterstroke. And Correcca's first against Sweden was the goal of the tournament. Italia 90 had a colour scheme that comes across on TV. The colours are so vibrant, movie quality. Also Pavarotti, discuss. High had all four wisdom teeth out during Italia 90. Cheeks sewn to the gums after an operation. Jumped up and roared after David O'Leary's goal. Oh, the pain. That is from Deccan Cork. Lads, I thought we were a little bit lucky to get out of the group, to be honest. England should have had a penalty. The Egypt game was a bit of a write-off, and then we were lucky against the Dutch.
Is Dan still there?
Johnny, yeah, you want to go ahead? I thought we were a bit lucky.
Sorry, I lost you for a second, lads.
Yeah, we time froze, and that's because everybody's really bought into our Italia 90 chat this afternoon.
We were like Stephen Kenny there when you asked him what his music taste was at the moment. It was probably the first question he's ever fudged as Ireland manager, JD.
Don't worry about it. Stephen Kenny earlier on. You can get that out on offtheball.com later on. Yeah, I was just kind of saying that we were a little bit lucky to get out of the group, but I suppose the way I felt at the time as a young lad watching it, that there was always something, we would always find a way to get out of it. With Packy Bonner's gritted teeth or a goal or here or there, we'd always find a way. We had the rub of the green, the magic then.
Yeah, we did. Obviously, we were also lucky to kind of draw Romania subsequent to that. But that goal against the Netherlands, as far as I remember, we were kind of well in that game. But that goal was an absolute fluke of all flukes. The fact that you'll never get a mistake like that. A long punted ball, presumably, that was probably our best way of scoring. We didn't seem to be able to create much from general open play, and that was a very, very good Dutch side. But I suppose, as Dan will point out as well, we were very lucky just to get Romania after that as well.
Well, I think for all that we had a great relationship with the Dutch, we ended up pulling a bit of a stroke on the Dutch as well, because, they had that sham for the last 15 minutes of the game where they didn't, neither side made an effort to actually try and win after the Quinn equaliser. So, at that stage, it's funny, we obviously, this was a 2014 World Cup, so there's 16 teams going through. We would obviously complain about how maybe the Euros has been diluted and how it's hard not to get through from the first round. But obviously, we had no complaints about the World Cup at that stage. But that Ireland and then the Dutch players basically agreed in the last, while to, 1982, Germany and Austria style to stop playing. Yet you would argue that probably the Dutch would have been the stronger of the two teams. And yet in the drawing of lots that unfolded, they ended up getting Germany and getting knocked out, and Ireland got Romania. So, we definitely did have a bit of luck with us there. It's interesting, even the cross-reference. I had a piece today in the paper on the Euro 92 campaign, which was the one that came after. I might touch on it in a while, but that's probably a campaign where Ireland played some of their best football, and it's almost less than a year after Italia 90, you have an Irish side outplaying England at Wembley by playing really good football as well. It was almost like the team had evolved during that campaign football-wise and didn't get the rub of the green that maybe undoubtedly that it did get in portions of 90.
Yeah, some more text messages in here. The 1990 and 94 World Cups are ingrained in my memory, had the effect of generating the thought into this day that if they played well, this is Ireland, and either or stood out, they must have been amazing. Carlos Valderrama, Enzo Schifo, Georgie Hagi, Walter Zenga, etc. Hi guys, was in Italia 90. Incredible. No other sport can stir the nation as much as Irish football. Never can forget it. Only one hate. Ole, ole. Time to get rid of it for the new future. That is from Mike in Galway. This is the Stephen Kenny future. 1990 cost me a fortune and nearly a liver. I was 22 and a GA and soccer fan. Cork won the double the same year. And I was out every weekend and hung over and work every Monday morning. Brilliant times. Italia 90 memories. I was 9 years of age. I remember the principal in our rural school asking if anyone had a portable TV. We had a tiny second TV in our kitchen with rabbit ears that I brought into school, and 4 classes gathered around it in the master's room. Also remember my dad bringing us around in the car, hanging out the windows with our flags, beeping the horn after our wins. This programme is like the warm hug we can't share these days. Thanks. Very nice text in there on 53106. Lads, I was in Los Angeles for Italia 90. I remember a gang of us in my sister's apartment watching the Packie Bonner save. The place went nuts. We all ran out and jumped into the swimming pool. The other apartments weren't too happy considering it was still morning. That is from Mick in Dublin. Let's play the Packie Bonner commentary here from George Hamilton in Genoa.
David O'Leary of Arsenal. In his 52nd international appearance, David O'Leary is entrusted with the responsibility of taking the penalty that could send Ireland into the quarter-finals of the World Cup. This kick can decide it all. The nation holds its breath. Yes, we're there!
Well, it wasn't Packie Bonner against Daniel Timofte. It was David O'Leary scoring the winning penalty. And interesting thing that I kind of learned about this was that Niall Quinn and David O'Leary had a bit of a book going in training where they would have bets that Niall Quinn fancies himself as a goalkeeper, would put himself in goals, and they would then test the players and, you know, have a wager on it. And then it served everybody very well. When it came to penalties, you had Kevin Sheedy, Ray Houghton, Tony Cascarino all scoring. And then Timofte's penalty was saved, and Bonner and David O'Leary put it in the back of the net. And to me, guys, I don't know what you think, I think that is the greatest sporting moment in the country's history, because it was just going into uncharted waters, uncharted territory, a World Cup quarter-final, the biggest game in the world, and we don't know how far we're going to go in this. And to be in Genoa that day, I think, was amazing for anybody who was there.
Yeah, you know, it wouldn't have followed a great 120 minutes of football, but I don't know if that changed Irish soccer forever, potentially, that penalty, because it was just that kind of defining moment where, you know, if you weren't watching that, I mean, there must be something wrong with you, if you know what I mean. How could you not watch a moment that a nation that, let's be honest, the Republic of Ireland as a nation was in some respects a failed state for a long time, you know, ruined by the Catholic Church, impoverished kind of in terms of the economy, lost an awful lot of people to England in the 50s, the 60s, well into the 80s, massive recession, and the nation didn't really have many reasons to be proud of itself, I would argue, apart from the fact that, you know, we had become an independent state and we'd been always democratic, but in turn, we didn't have an awful lot to cheer about for a proper sports-mad nation. And to be in the last 8 of our first World Cup at that time, and to do it in the manner of a penalty shootout, you know, with the goalkeeper from Donegal, a place like so much of the west of Ireland, absolutely ravaged by immigration. What an iconic moment. And George Hamilton commentating, you know, he was the voice of Irish football, still is the voice of football commentary in this country since as long as I can remember. And just the way that was delivered, I'll be quite honest with you, just when the ball passed the line there and the crowd started cheering, I just got this massive tingle, like I was there at the time, and watching the video earlier, the official video, the reaction of the fans, and just imagining if you were there, you know, if you had a million problems in the world, you had a million less after that. I cried on the sheepskin rug that day, cried my eyes out. In my little Ireland top with the triangles. It's funny, even like George Hamilton was so good, like for television, it's all about the pictures. And you could just hear that kind of gap, because everybody's just waiting for that penalty. Will it go in? And David O'Leary, it's well documented that he didn't have the best relationships with Jack Charlton, was pretty much frozen out after not going to Iceland, I think it was, for a tournament in 1986. It was Mick McCarthy and Kevin Moran were the central defenders. Paul Mcgrath played midfield. But David O'Leary put it in the back of the net, had the guts to do it. And it's funny, like, it was a tournament dominated by penalties, and the only penalty shootout that we had, we didn't win a game in the tournament.
Yeah, I don't know why you needed a sheepskin rug, John. It was a warm day from what I recall, wasn't it? Like, I think was it a Monday afternoon, maybe?
Yeah, it was a weekday afternoon, I think.
Yeah, because I was talking to my dad yesterday, because I was asking him what he remembered, and he was a teacher, he's a retired teacher, and he described being in Dublin, which is like an hour away from where we grew up. No M1 in those days. So he remembered being at some conference that day and driving through O'Connell Street around 2:00, and the place was absolutely deserted, and everyone in the country was on the same page. Like, you had to be somewhere to watch this match. And even like where I'm from is a couple of miles out in the countryside, and there's only 5-6 houses in a row, and that's it. And I even just remember then the spontaneous celebration out on the front lawn afterwards, and a couple other houses around being the same. And like that was a shared moment for everyone, no matter what street or town or village or wherever they were. It was like, you know, the nation stopped. I mean, it's one of these cliche, you know, the Melbourne Cup, the race that stops the nation. But like, I think that game to me, more than anything, and I say like now when there's massive Ireland games now, like Thierry Henry and the Euros in 2016 and other sports or whatever, I'm not sure if, and maybe are we looking at this too nostalgically through the eyes of maybe being kids or whatever, but it did seem like something that was frozen, and that absolutely everybody, as Johnny said, like who wouldn't have been tuned into it that day. I mean, maybe there was a couple of hardcore people who still, you know, advocated the ban, but aside from that, really, I can't think of too many people who weren't caught up in it, swept up in it, even if they didn't like. And a lot of it, I mean, the whole aspect of it was like there was a lot of people who weren't necessarily massive football fans caught up in it. And we've all seen reeling in the ears and the crowd shots and people watching it in the RDS or these big halls. And like, you know, it might have been the first game they'd nearly ever watched. But it didn't matter because there was this sort of, we were all in it together in a really dramatic way. And yeah, it's a special memory. I know we're repeating ourselves, but we need something to celebrate, and it's in 30 years, it's hard to believe.
Well, Bill O'Hurley, he was a national treasure, and this was quite a funny moment after that win over Romania.
Fantastic! I said at the start, ciao Roma, buongiorno Roma. What do you think, lads? Magic?
We think it was fantastic, Bill. We think you're being silly. No, we think it was bloody great, and it was the best afternoon we've had for ages. And the serious point, I think, is that the team played magnificently. The tactics were right. We ground them down, and we played our football, and we deserved everything we got.
No, let me tell you for a start, before we join our panel for discussion, that Alf has been deferred and Home Away has been deferred, and we're on the air until 10 o'clock.
You are Alf, Bill.
There was only one channel back then. It was just the soccer channel on RTTV. And once again, I think that was maybe the first World Cup that this became a thing. The panels, the Bill O'Hurley, and then we saw it in USA 94 where the times of the games were great. It just changed everything, really. And I think what you said there, Johnny, was really, really apt, because the economy was just a real mess in the 70s and 80s in Ireland. Lots of people leaving the country, really talented people, well-educated people, with the troubles going on. And I think there was a few things that happened at the same time that gave the country a lot of confidence. And maybe people say, well, that's just a naive thing to say, and confidence is, well, how can you measure confidence? But I think you too, being on the front of Time magazine, I think Mary Robinson, our first female president, being elected later that year in 1990. And I think all these things kind of was a convergence of all these things that made people feel good about themselves again. And then when the troubles ended, the investment started coming into the country.
Yeah, the trouble. So much going on in Ireland at that time. You know, obviously the players meeting the Pope was consistent with the fact that at that stage we were still a profoundly sort of Catholic state. And I was obviously too young, but I imagine Ireland was kind of becoming a bit more liberal at that time, that we were kind of breaking off the shackles of maybe the restrictions of the lives that we lived. And, you know, that World Cup just let you do whatever you wanted in that moment. And that, you know, just seeing Bill O'Hurley there saying that Alf was cancelled. Alf is still going in Home and Away, and you know, all these years later, as much as an awful lot of time has passed, but
different Alf, John. It's a different Alf.
I thought he said Alf and Home and Away. No,
Alf was a TV show, an American TV show. It was a sort of an animal named Alf. Alf wasn't Home and Away, but I love the fact that you've had this clip for years thinking he was referring to Alf Stewart, but he was not.
The basic point is true, but your reference there, Dan, is something that I often think about, because when you remember these games when you were a kid, so when you were a kid, and I was very much a kid at that stage, sport was pretty much everything for several years of your life. So I've always said if you can cry after a sporting event, you pretty much have a very happy life, because if sport means that much to you, you know, the rest of your life has to be going well, because sport can just literally grip you like that. And for me, it's always a pursuit of the buzz maybe that I got, or the absolute dejection that I got when I was a kid. And if Liverpool lost a game, or if Galway lost in the Connacht Championship or something like that, or if Ireland lost in World Cup 94. And as you get older, you see fans at games, the fans that are in the crowd and they're kind of roaring their terrace chants. They're getting younger as you get older, and you realise as you get older that maybe you're bringing your kids to the game, or maybe you're going along and instead of standing at the game now, you're sitting, and you're getting older, and sport becomes maybe less important to you over time as compared to when you were a kid. And when you look back in Italia 90 and you see Jack Charlton, you see Bobby Robson, you see all the veteran coaches who, you know, were absolutely immersed in this, and you do realise that sport just can be all things to all men and all women. And watching that back, I don't think any sporting moment in Irish football has ever compared to that. And I suppose Stephen Kenny, if he's listening in, will hope that one day we can go better than be knocked out in the final 8. But I don't think anything can rival that. And it was interesting you said to Stephen Kenny, John, that he's got the biggest job in Irish sport, because I was having a little think about that, and I was like, what would the rugby family say about that? Because, you know, some would argue that rugby is bigger than football in Ireland. I would always argue football is our biggest sport.
No comparison. Rugby is not played countrywide. It's a sport. Well, I mean, look.
Yeah, we'll never have Andy Farrell's decisions dissected by Bruce Shields on Liveline. You know what I mean? Like, this is the slight contrast with the Irish manager's job, that there's a bit of everyone in it, and if you know, we've seen the good and the bad of that.
Rugby is a sport played by probably 10 nations at a senior level in the world, and look, it's a great game and people love it and everything. I don't want to get into rugby, soccer. On that as well, JD, just to see the you know, as much as I kind of resented the fact that the Euros went to the 2014s, as referenced by Dan, it is a massive boon for a tournament to see a team come through. And, you know, you look at the Cameroon team of that World Cup, like, it must have been possibly the best African team ever to play in a World Cup tournament, like, pushed England really, really hard. And I do remember some of my neighbours were almost as wrapped up in Roger Milla as they were in the Irish team. And again, that was because he was whatever age he was at the time, and they loved the underdog. But what they brought to those tournaments, and football, as you say, being a truly global game. Well, it might be a bit syrupy to say it, but if you're a young person in Cameroon who's poor and you're watching this on a broken down TV in 1990, how inspirational could that be? And that's what we saw in Brazil, all these military juntas in Brazil and Argentina, and all, like Ronaldo coming from real poverty to become a footballer. Like, this is a global game, and you know yourself from Dan from World Cups and that. The one thing I took out of the Russia World Cup, far more important than the football, was the way it first of all opened the eyes of the Russian people that were in a prison effectively for 40 or 50 years. That was opened up. You got Panama fans going crazy in Nizhny Novgorod in Gorky, where even Russians couldn't go on holidays. And that, to me, was the great thing about football. And we'll get to it more in the second hour, but I think it was the art of the possible. And that's why Italia 90 is such a landmark event, the art of the possible. You only qualify for 3 World Cups. USA 94, the giant stadium, we'll talk about that in another week, even Japan and Korea. And it's the belonging. And I met a taxi driver a couple of years ago who was 18 at the time, and I asked him where his ticket was. His mother's got his ticket. But it's memories you'll never take away. 53106, we got some, wow, this is one of the best shows I've listened to. Fair play, dudes. Was only 2 at the time, but I've obviously seen the videos and images. I can't even imagine the joy of watching it, let alone being at it. In Italy, cheers, that's from Joe. That's because we've been starved, Joe, of success. I was 11, all my cousins, aunts and uncles, etc. in our front room. I can remember the very spot I was standing for O'Leary's winning penalty. My dad was hugging me so much I couldn't breathe. All of us out in the street hugging and cheering with the neighbours. One of my favourite childhood memories, and showed how great we are as a people. We still are great. Thank you for your text. I'd love to know, does anybody think if VAR was around in 1990 with Shalashi's goal being disallowed, would we have beaten the Italians and then the Argies in the semi? Ifs, buts and maybes, I know. Simon Lowther in Malahide. Lads, it was interesting that World Cup did change the game because they got rid of the back pass.
Yeah, it's a bit jarring, isn't it, when you watch some of the old clips as we have, then you see the back passes and you're nearly calling it for a brief second as to what's going on here. And I mean, we were exponents of that rule. You know, we called on the it was almost like getting the ball back to Packy was like a key tactical move at times to get everyone 10 yards up the pitch. And it is funny what Johnny said earlier on about Ireland's style, like Jack Charlton's style in the early days. Like, I think because probably it was hard to watch, and in terms of it was primitive in the style of primitive in the sense of maybe some of the tactics that were employed, but there was a plan behind what he did try and do. And I remember years back getting to interview Jack Charlton, maybe 10, 12 years ago, maybe. And he was going on about how when he got the Ireland job, one of the big things he did was he'd watch Belgium, who were a big team at the time at the 1986 World Cup. I think they went to the semi-finals.
Yeah.
And he just had a thing about how Belgium's style of play and aspects to think of, like the Irish, how teams weren't pressing enough. And there was like a sense that actually what he was trying to do at that stage was to react to a trend in the game at that time and how you counter it. And that's the way that, like, football can be very cyclical in many respects. That you've had sort of a three at the back being in vogue for a period of time and then returning and going out of the game or whatever it might be. That Jack's Irish team initially, like, he was trying something that was new in its own way. Even if it was particularly unrepeated. And it was just as Johnny said that over time teams basically found it out. But it was actually brutally effective. There's a look on the face of us after that horrible goal that Quinn scores where Van Breukelen drops it. I think it's a look on the face of maybe Hullett. It shows Hullett walking back to the backway line, walking back to the halfway line, almost throwing his eyes to heaven.
Okay.
But this was hell. Playing this Irish team was hell because it was that uncomfortable.
53106 for your text. Your memories of Italia 90, if you're old enough. We'll get to more of them after this.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
Hi there, I just want to pay tribute to my neighbour Sean, who's
been going out every day to work on the front line and hasn't
made a single complaint. So I think they
deserve some recognition on national radio for being so amazing.
It's important to pay tribute to all those helping us get through these challenging times.
And here at News Talk, we're creating a space for you to celebrate the people that are making your life that little bit easier.
The nurses, the shop assistants, the people on your street.
In fact, anyone you think deserving of some well-earned praise.
Call us on 1890 453 108.
1890 453 108.
And we'll play them on air for the whole of Ireland to hear.
Sean, you're an absolute legend.
And from all of us at News Talk, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
QuoteDevil.ie can save you money on your car insurance, van insurance or home insurance. QuoteDevil.ie also specialise in car insurance for first-time drivers, young drivers and difficult-to-insure cases.
The Quote Devil's always got one hell of a quote.
Quote Devil Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Some of us have gone from baking with grandchildren to figuring out how to join a family video call. Staying connected is really important for our well-being. For more ways to help you cope at home, go to gov.ie/together, an initiative of the Government of Ireland.
At Lidl, your safety is our #1 priority. So we're rolling out some additional measures for our customers and staff, such as plexiglass screens at tills, new signage to help maintain social distancing, hand sanitizer stations, an increased security presence and priority shopping hours from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for elderly and vulnerable customers. Lidl, more for you.
With our network of Irish, British and international reporters, the Sunday Times is your reliable source for news and opinion on the pandemic that's changing our world. Even if you're at home, you can stay in touch by subscribing to our 7-day digital package for just €5 a month, with the first month free. Sign up today at thetimes.ie/join.
In these difficult times, many businesses are still very much open for business and still need to communicate with their customers. Radio can help. Right now, it's playing an even bigger role keeping people in Ireland informed and entertained. And the latest technology means that even with social distancing, radio ads can still be made and broadcast safely. Radio. Business as usual, even when it's not business as usual. For more information, email info@fmjunction.ie.
This is an emergency appeal for Goal. Coronavirus has changed the lives of every single family in Ireland. Our government are doing all they can to keep us safe, and as citizens, we are playing our part. But for families across Africa, the reality is very different. With overstretched hospitals, medical equipment and water in short supply, the impact will be devastating. Right now, Goal workers are delivering life-saving aid to the most vulnerable. This is an emergency appeal like no other. You can be part of Goal's vital response by making an urgent online donation now at goalglobal.org. That's goalglobal.org. Thank you, and please stay safe.
The National Standards Authority of Ireland have published a series of business guidance documents to help businesses struggling to deal with the impact of COVID-19. Whether you're a small retailer or a large manufacturer, we can offer you practical steps to help you meet the public health guidelines and reduce the risk of spreading infection. For more information on our guidelines and how to contact us, visit us at nsai.ie. This is an initiative of the Government of Ireland.
At Harvey Norman, we're here to help. Our online store is open and we can deliver the products you need to your home. And right now, we're offering free delivery on all orders over €50. So if you need technology to help you stay connected to work or school, a home office desk, solutions to store food, a spare bed, then visit us at harveynorman.ie and get free delivery on all orders over €50 this bank holiday weekend only. Harvey Norman, your appliances, technology, furniture and bedding specialists.
Go! We all have a part to play in helping our community. For you, it could be staying home to keep loved ones safe. For us at AIB, it means doing everything in our power to support you. Our dedicated team are here with a range of supports for business and personal customers impacted by COVID-19 and all those cocooning. We're also investing over €2 million to accelerate Ireland's effort to develop a vaccine. Because together, apart, we're all making the difference. Visit aib.ie/COVID-19 for more information. Bank safely in branch, by phone or online. Allied Irish Banks plc is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
5 a.m, boots on, sun not even up. Down to the field to collect the herd. First milking of the day, and it's only getting started.
Dairy farmers are doing what they've always done, caring for the land and their grass-fed cows, working to keep fridges stocked with quality fresh Irish milk. Milk to keep families fed and nourished. Support Irish dairy farmers by choosing milk with the green rosette, our guarantee of local freshness. From the National Dairy Council.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
And you're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5 o'clock in the company of the Irish Independent journalist Daniel McDonnell and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. I remember our football coverage brought to you with thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. We're reflecting every week at 3 o'clock, because there's no live football obviously with the pandemic, on World Cup years. Today, Italia 90. 53106 or at Off the Ball on Twitter if you've got memories of this great tournament that changed the nation. We're also streaming live as well. You can get the stream until 5 o'clock on our social channels, on YouTube, on Facebook and on Twitter. Just some of the comments are coming in from listeners here. Jonathan O'Brien, here's a fun fact for you. Cameroon in 1990 are the only team in World Cup history to win a group while having a negative goal difference. This is a good one. Hi lads, Keith from Newbridge here, 48 years old. After O'Leary scored the penalty, I went out to the pandemonium in Clondalkin village. I was surfing on a car roof when I fell off and a girl picked me up. She is my wife, Amanda, and we're together 30 years in July. I'm bawling here. Great show. Fair play, irreplaceable memories. At the last minute...
that is just amazing. I mean, Amanda, she obviously has a fairly high tolerance for people absolutely acting the maggot. I mean, the fact that she'd fall in love with a fella who falls off a car... I think you should, I implore Off the Ball to bring the two of them on the show at some stage, JD, and I want you presented.
This would be like kind of, I don't know, blind date 30 years on or something like that?
J Silla D.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing they didn't stay in to watch Home and Away. You know, this is the thing. The fate took them in or Alf, you know.
Here's Johnny Ward. Here's Johnny Ward with a quick reminder. It's like even somebody texted in Alf is alien life form. So we actually have people like with the encyclopedias and the dictionaries and all that.
I thought he was an animal or something. Yeah, whatever.
Alf Stewart is a national hero. I don't care in Ireland. Like the big man is still going.
He's on about the other Alf though again, Johnny.
I know.
Again,
so am I.
There are two Alfs.
Dankin, you flyman mongrel. At the last minute, I agreed with my brother in Dublin to join his tour group of 28. I was living in Hong Kong, but I arrived in Palermo before then. On getting onto the bus to the hotel complex, the Italian guide could not understand why he kept counting 29 people, but the lads just kept telling him to count again. He eventually gave up. No hotels available until I checked out the penthouse of the best hotel and worked out that 3 bedrooms and living room perfectly affordable by 8 guys sharing. Job done. A couple of nights before the Egypt game, we were in a nightclub outside Palermo when a shooting took place. On the day of the game, we managed to get a few beers in outside a cafe when a full mafia funeral passed us by. The match was the most boring I ever watched. My brother fell asleep. But for the Holland game, we're sitting beside the wives of Ray Houghton and John Aldridge having the crack. When Aldo was subbed, his little lad started to cry. His mum told him not to worry. Daddy was just a bit tired. I then had to return to Hong Kong, but it was killing me that I wouldn't be able to get to the Romania game, the knockout match. So I went to my senior partner in the law firm to see if I could fly back to Italy again. He told me it was not advisable if I wanted to progress in the firm. Had to watch it on TV. End of story. That is from Damien. And the night of my 21st, my dad informed me that I was conceived on the night of the Romania match.
Took his time telling you.
I was living in London and self-employed, got to see the Romania game till 90 minutes, had to go to work and heard the rest on the car radio. Later on, my way home, the Archway roundabout was blocked with joyous Irish fans. Later at the Wood Green Crossroads, the same thing. A day never to be forgotten. That's from Pat. That is a fascinating text about all the diaspora and the people that were in London working who had emigrated from Ireland.
Well, I mean, again, to reference the amount of Irish people who had obviously moved to London, because we played England in March '91, and I spoke to Niall Quinn about that time. And just the massive Irish community that existed, and it's always there. But in particular, that was, as we mentioned earlier, coming off the back of the '80s, the amount of people that emigrated to England and to London in particular. So you can only imagine what it would have been like in sort of Kilburn or some of these Irish clubs, these massive Irish clubs that existed, the old dance halls that you hear all these tales about. So, I mean, that's why I love these stories. Like Los Angeles earlier on, I was thinking, that would have been pretty early in the morning, and even what would the TV access have been? I'm sure there was Irish in Australia or whatever around that time too, and they all have their own individual stories to tell.
Yeah, and we got to the quarter-final. Italy and Rome. We met the Pope, as Johnny was saying there earlier on. Lads, we were never going to get through against the hosts in their own backyard. I know Argentina did them in Naples, but we were never going to win that game.
Dan touched on this as well, and this is something that Big Jack probably doesn't get enough credit for. The fact that we really pressed teams high up the pitch, and that was probably, as he was saying there, that was probably a little bit revolutionary. Like, it's all good and well. If we're going to play a really nice brand of football, that's fine, but Stephen Kenny's team is going to be taking on a team that's better than them and a team that's going to park the bus. So you have to be able to find ways of winning individual games, and every 90 minutes are organic. But Big Jack, in fairness, we press teams high up the pitch. Unfortunately, when we played England, the Netherlands, and Italy in the space of 5 games. So the fact that we were always likely to lose one of them, and I think Packie Bonner, the mistake he made against the Netherlands 4 years later was bad, but to be fair, he didn't do well against Donadoni's strike as well, and Scalacci was obviously just everything he touched turned to gold pretty much at that stage. But Packie, in hindsight, the ball probably moved, but it was a different time, and he's got to kind of parry that out of the way. I know it's easy for me to say that, but I think in reflection he will say, we could have. He could have done better there, but being honest, against an Italian team, even if we beat them, we're obviously playing the Argies. We were probably slightly punching above our weight, but Italy did seem, watching back, they did seem to have a little bit of mental jitters in games. I think there was a massive weight of expectation. I spoke to Aniello Palma, who's a friend of mine, and he said, I was 8 years old, went to the match in Naples, Cameroon. Great electricity in the air. I wished I was older so I could enjoy it more, including Diego in Napoli. And obviously we'll talk about that in the second part of the show. The Diego Napoli thing is, you could write a book on that alone. But I suppose with Ireland and Italy, my recollection of the game, and this is the game that I remember most from the whole tournament, is that we were kind of battered, never really looked like scoring. And once Scalacci scored, I sort of thought we were screwed.
Yeah, there was funny things in that game. I remember Jimmy McGee. I remember it was a Saturday night. And it was like a Saturday night about 8 o'clock, and Jimmy McGee was doing the commentary on it. It wasn't George Hamilton, and Scalacci scored. And it's funny, like, when we scored against Italy in the Giants Stadium, we were holding on to that, and then it turned out that Italy were never going to score that day the way Paul Mcgrath played. But I just never really felt once we conceded we were going to score a goal. And then there's the funny story about Charlie Haughey, the Prime Minister at the time, the Taoiseach, coming into the dressing room afterwards, and Tony Coscarino and Angie Townsend had no idea who he was. I go, who the hell is that?
Possibly better off.
They probably should have sent him out. But like the thing about that Italy game is interesting, John, because like I got a message earlier on. Someone did they recall a Zenga save from Paul Mcgrath? I definitely remember Niall Quinn having a chance.
Header, yeah.
Yeah, I remember the Quinn one, because I remember, as you said, it was a Saturday night. It was more an indoors experience, curtains pulled. It was, and I just remember the moment of the whole family in the room when Quinn nearly scoring. But that Mcgrath one now, I don't recall it. Maybe someone else out there can. But it was a tight enough game that it wasn't as if they were battered. It wasn't as if Ireland were battered. No. But it was. We'll talk about the World Cup later on in the second hour, because that World Cup did become quite negative as it went on, and that one goal being enough wasn't necessarily a massive surprise in the flow of the competition, because there's classic memories of the competition, but I'm not so sure it's actually really a classic tournament in terms of the footballing moments as it progressed. And it's probably no surprise that Ireland probably played their part in that, to be fair, and that game in particular was never going to be a high scoring one.
53106 for your text.
Definitely, JD, in just that text that came in earlier about Paul Mcgrath, because I remember Paul Mcgrath primarily as a central defender, and obviously that Italy game in 1994 is probably the one that'll stick out. But just remembering him being like just the best defender I'd probably seen as a young lad, and just always expect him to get in the way. But I would like texters to kind of recall what they remembered him like as a defensive midfielder, because I'm sure there was a lot more to his game, and he seemed to actually have a very good strike of the ball as well. And I suppose that's one thing that I'm probably a little bit too young to remember. Paul Mcgrath, that defensive midfield role, or that kind of central midfield role, was that actually his best position? Because when I remember him, he was getting on a bit, and he was obviously ushered back just to kind of save his knees, I suppose.
Well, I think there's a few things there. I think Paul Mcgrath was the best defender that we had by the time 94 came around, so that's why I think he was shuffled back into defence. He suited Charlton's style of playing midfield. It's funny though, Ronnie Whelan was like a captain, I think, in the Malta game, was a Liverpool league-winning player, FA Cup winning captain. But he got injured before the tournament, and he never could get back to full fitness, and he wasn't played. And I remember the time, and even speaking to him subsequently, it kind of rankles with him that he didn't get the chance to play at the World Cup, because he was a player that could have unlocked Egypt, Ronnie Whelan, and he might have given us something else in that Italy game if he'd been fully fit. Now maybe he would argue that he was by that stage of the tournament. But Paul Mcgrath, Jack got the best out of Paul Mcgrath, I think, in that tournament, and generally as an Ireland player.
I think it wasn't there a previous game against Scotland? It was 3 years previously where I think Mcgrath and Ronnie Whelan nearly played as fullbacks, and I think Ireland around that time, with Mick McCarthy, who I think obviously would have been viewed as one of Jack's favourites, and wasn't necessarily always the most maybe popular player with pundits. But you also had David O'Leary, who couldn't get in the squad. So you actually, between McCarthy, Moran, O'Leary, and Mcgrath, you actually had four top-notch, really good level centre halves available. And Jack's thing, O'Leary obviously was exiled for so long, but there were times where he just tried to get the best 11 on the pitch rather than necessarily have the best 11 by position. But obviously Mcgrath, had the all-round skills. I'm a bit like Johnny. I don't remember seeing a huge amount of him in that position, but clearly it probably suited Ireland's style. And of course Townsend, who'd watched Euro 88 as an England fan, but at that time, he almost became to embody a sort of a Jack team and a Jack midfielder, and in terms of what he brought to the mix as well. But actually down the spine of the team, there was loads of options.
Got to take a break shortly here, guys. We'll also talk about more of the rest of the World Cup in Italia 90 after 4 o'clock, between 4 and 5. But we'll also get to more of your Ireland memories. Great memories, lads. I remember being behind the goals for the shootout, but I also remember 2 days queuing for the ticket in Genoa. Also, the celebration that night as Italy won as well. The Italians separated us in the Olympic Stadium, and the reason we stayed behind after was that the cops wouldn't let us out. That is from Paul and Donegal. A great show, lads. Brilliant commentary. Went to the Ireland-Romania game in Genoa with a mate. Spent the money we'd saved for a dishwasher on the flights. It was also our wedding anniversary. Long-suffering wife Mags still with me, and eventually we got the dishwasher. Keep up the good work, and congrats on your sporting items during COVID-19. That is from Matty and Luke, and thanks so much for your text on 53106, Matty. Morning after beating England 1-1. Well, that's not true, but it was a draw. We bumped into Bobby Robson. You're so anxious to text in, and we know on 53106 here.
I think that was deliberate, John. I think it was
a pun.
Yeah.
We always beat England when we
see. I always read these things at face value in the moment.
We've won a lot of 1-1s over the years, to be fair.
We bumped into Bobby Robson and the England squad in the departures in Cagliari, a gent to his fingertips. Lads, Mick here in Dublin again. To fill you in on the TV access in Los Angeles during Italia 90, the American coverage was brutal. They used to put ads on at corners, so the old GA trick of having a Mexican TV channel on with the American voice coverage through the stereo. Mad stuff altogether. And just some text in here before we go to the break on Stephen Kenny, who was on the show earlier on. You can listen back to the interview that we did with Stephen Kenny on offtheball.com on our podcast network. Go to the podcast section, the highlights section of offtheball.com. You can also watch the interview on YouTube later on. Stephen Kenny, the new Republic of Ireland manager, speaking about his aspirations, his ambitions for the role. Best wishes to Stephen Kenny with the Senior Ireland team. He was right to put his own support team together. His design is his way. We all in the country are looking forward to the Irish team's success under his leadership. Regards, that's the former Dundalk captain, Joey Malone. And all the best to Stephen in the Ireland job. I'll never forget my first encounter with Stephen 20 years ago, where he told us at Longford Town Youth Training not to wear Premier League jerseys to training anymore. A small thing, but it was completely revolutionary to us at the time. It was one of the things that made us believe in ourselves. Ultimately, that led Longford Town to the most successful time in its history. Exciting times ahead for the national team. 53106 for your texts. The rest of Italia 90 between 4 and 5.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
Join that conversation on Facebook and Twitter.
Need next day delivery on industrial tools and safety supplies? Then you need Caulfield Industrial, one of Ireland's largest suppliers. Our nationwide distribution service offers next day delivery on over 50,000 stock items from caulfieldindustrial.com. We supply quality tools, safety gear and equipment from all the top brands like DeWalt, Snickers, Bosch, Stanley, Baco and more. So whether you're a professional tradesman or a DIY enthusiast, shop online at caulfieldindustrial.com.
COVID-19 may have impacted the finances of your business. If you are an Irish SME finding it difficult to access credit, then the government's Credit Guarantee Scheme could help. Working with AIB, Bank of Ireland and Ulster Bank, the scheme supports access to finance for eligible businesses who may have previously encountered barriers to lending. The scheme covers loans between €10,000 and €1 million and with terms to 7 years and can be used for term loans, demand loans or performance bonds. Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at sbci.gov.ie or call 1-800-804-482. This is a Government of Ireland initiative delivered by the SBCI. The SBCI, putting Irish SMEs first.
At Tesco, we're here to lend a helping hand this Easter with delicious dinner options like our Board B-approved Tesco finest Irish whole leg of lamb, now half price. There's tasty treats like our Tesco hot cross buns 4-pack for only 49¢. Plus a wide range of medium Easter eggs like Mars Maltesers and Cadbury Cream Egg, any 5 for just €5. Tesco. Every little helps. Customer quotas apply.
COVID-19 is a major public health emergency here in Ireland and around the world. It's having a big impact on every aspect of our lives. We are now asked to stay at home with limited exceptions. This is especially hard for older people and those who've been advised to cocoon. Being isolated from friends and family is hard for everyone. So right now, it's important that we look out for each other and look after our neighbours. That's why national government, local government and the community and voluntary sectors have all come together to create the Community Call. To make sure that anyone who needs help can get help. And to make sure that people who would like to volunteer in their community can help where they are most needed. If you need help, if you know someone who needs help, or if you'd like to offer help, please call 0818 222 024 or call your local authority Community Call helpline. All the details are live now at gov.ie. Supported by the Government of Ireland.
At Harvey Norman, we're here to help. Our online store is open and we can deliver the products you need to your home. And right now, we're offering free delivery on all orders over €50. So if you need technology to help you stay connected to work or school, a home office desk, solutions to store food, a spare bed, then visit us at harveynorman.ie and get free delivery on all orders over €50 this bank holiday weekend only. Harvey Norman, your appliances, technology, furniture and bedding specialists.
Hi, I'm Adam Harris of As I Am, Ireland's autism charity. April is World Autism Month, but COVID-19 has forced us to cancel the vital fundraising events we need to support our work. While disruption of routine and anxiety are difficult for everyone, for autistic people they can be particularly challenging. More than ever, Ireland's autistic community needs your support. Please text As I Am, all one word, to 50300 to donate €4 so we can help autistic people through this crisis and beyond. Thank you.
Text costs €4. As I Am will receive a minimum of €3.60. Service provider like Charity, helpline 076 6805 278.
Waterford Institute of Technology's Open Days are moving online. Choose from 5 separate events in business, engineering, health sciences, humanities, science and computing. Log on at 2 p.m. daily from the 20th to the 24th of April and see why over 2,000 students choose WIT every year. Visit wit.ie/virtual open day.
Get the latest News Talk podcasts at newstalk.com and on the News Talk app. On 106 to 108 FM, on newstalk.com, on smart speaker, and on the News Talk app. This is News Talk.
It's 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Burke. The COVID-19 test backlog should be cleared by the end of next week, according to the Health Minister. Over 1,000 cases were confirmed last night among 14,000 samples tested in Germany. There are now over 8,000 confirmed cases in Ireland. Around 15,000 samples sent overseas are still awaiting analysis. Minister Harris says once the backlog's cleared, doctors can recommend more people be tested.
The next big challenge, if you like, will be we'll want to broaden the case definition in time. We'll want to continue to test as many people as we possibly can so that when we move to a world post-restrictions or with changed restrictions, that we can very quickly test and identify any potential for this virus in our communities.
A 24-year-old woman's due in court in an hour's time, charged after an alleged assault on a hospital worker in County Sligo. It happened at around 7:30 this morning at Sligo University Hospital. Gardaí say the worker wasn't seriously hurt. The woman arrested earlier has been charged and will appear before a special sitting of Sligo District Court this evening. Fianna Fáil says a late leaving cert will likely delay the start of the next school and college year. The state exam won't take place in June due to the pandemic and will instead be held in late July or early August. Thomas Byrne, the party's education spokesperson, expects the usual September academic start times to be pushed back.
This is a completely unprecedented situation, and I know I was talking to some of the university presidents, it's probably 3 weeks ago now, this came on, but they were open to any possible delays if it meant that things would start and if it meant we could get things done, obviously in a healthy way. So there may well be delays to the college year, and obviously I think there may well be delays to the school year.
Partial skeletal remains found in South Dublin earlier in the week have now been taken to the city mortuary. They were uncovered during works on common ground at the Lissenfield estate off the Rathmines Road on Thursday. The Garda Technical Bureau and a forensic anthropologist have now finished their work at the scene. Gardaí say a post-mortem will be carried out later, and that will decide how the investigation will proceed. And Paul McCartney's lyrics for the hit song Hey Jude have sold at auction for 9 times their original estimate. The notes, written in 1968, went for about €850,000 at the sale in New York. It's 4 minutes.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to the AA. Need to renew your AA home insurance? Go to the aa.ie/myAA.
Dry and sunny most places with some light breezes. Top temperatures between 15 and 20 degrees, warmest in the south. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
And you're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 o'clock in the company of the Irish Independent football journalist Daniel McDonnell and our broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Remember, our football coverage brought to you with thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. 53106 for your text messages. What are we doing this afternoon? Well, as every Saturday has been unfolding in the last few weeks, we've been reflecting on a World Cup year. And today, it's Italia 90. If you're just joining us, the reaction, I've never seen a reaction like it on a text machine to Italia 90 at 53106. Some really kind of funny stories back from the day. Hi lads, Italia 90, 4 of us flew to Rome, then drove to Sicily for the Egypt and Holland matches, drove back to Rome, flew to Ireland on the Saturday. On Monday morning, 2 of us flew to Zurich, hired the car and drove to Genoa. We were behind the goal where the penalties were taken. Brilliant. Flew back to Dublin. On the Friday, we're down to 1 me. I flew to Zurich again, drove to Rome for the quarter-final. Have got 1,000 stories. Don't think we had loads of money. We didn't. We were skint. But incredible 3 weeks, could write a book on the stories. About Paul Mcgrath, folks, what Mcgrath did in midfield was that the opposition couldn't come down the middle against us. Just a lockdown. So yes, we could sometimes conceded a goal, but rarely a second goal. That is from Dave in Bray. Also some tweets as well. Paul Fla missed our flight to Palermo. Didn't get to see the luggage for 2 days. Rashers, sausages, butter all in it. All in the luggage at over 30 degrees Celsius. Billy Tracy, one of my mates who I went to all the games with, went to all the group games in Italy. It was a flip of a coin for me to go to Italy with him or emigrate to the USA. I went to Chicago and ended up staying for over 5 years. I subsequently went to see the Irish team and party with them in Boston 92-93. Following on from that, we all travelled to New York and Orlando for the World Cup in 1994. What a time to be alive. The memories will last a lifetime. Also some other texts on 53106. Great show, lads. Lump of the throat stuff. That's from Jared and Cork. And loving the show, lads. Great way to spend a Saturday afternoon under the current circumstances. That is from Killian and Meath. 53106. Lads, the rest of the tournament, Argentina, Diego Maradona, wins the Serie A with Napoli twice, 87, and I think it was 1990 as well. He won the UEFA Cup. He was the subject of religious obsession in Naples, and it was just amazing that Argentina would end up playing Italy in Naples in the semi-final, and his career to me was never the same afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people watched the Diego documentary recently as well, and you almost see like, and obviously like there's an element of art about that documentary, but there is no doubt, as you say, that tournament almost came at a point in the road where his relationship with Italy was changing, and it brings a lot. I mean, obviously, some of the footage in the Diego documentary really brings you into that semi-final at that time, and then the footage in the final of the Argentine anthem being booed, and Maradona is sort of, not needing to be a skilled lip reader to know what he felt about it. And like that Argentina team, it's sort of interesting really that they made their way to the final, but they weren't really a lovable team. I mean, they had the semi-final in itself against Italy seemed to be a fairly ugly match. Although, again, it's almost like Argentina in many respects were a reflection of the tournament, which actually was a pretty cynical tournament. And even, I mean, Germany, or the other finalists, West Germany as it was, I mean, they were involved with the Rudi Völler and Rijkaard incident that no team could probably escape some kind of flashpoint like that. But that Argentina team in particular, but yet at the same time, like there are still moments that where Maradona showcased his greatness. That even in the game against Brazil, and even in the game in the semi-final, like he was involved in moments. Like he still managed to rise above it until the final, when Argentina just couldn't rise anymore. And I must admit, I had to look back today on the teams for the final, and some of the Argentina players, like that was their own. They weren't involved in 86, and they weren't involved really 94. It was that was their team, and Maradona probably was trying to drag them along, but the bitterness and whatever hung over from that tournament. I mean, I don't know, you say he was never the same. Like you would think that probably the warning signs were there well before 90, but maybe it accelerated it to a degree, John, but yet they met the final. It's almost incredible that they did, despite whatever limitations they had.
Well, just psychologically, and I watched that movie, and everybody should watch it. The guy who made Senna and the Amy Winehouse movies made it. Like, I've never seen somebody who has experienced such fame and religious obsession as Maradona did in Naples. It was like, this was a team, a club in the south that never won the Italian league. Clubs in the south didn't win it. And this guy, with obviously other players around him, wins the Italian league against that Milan team, and Inter Milan at the time, wins the UEFA Cup. Then says before the semi-final that the people of Naples should be backing Argentina and me rather than their own Italian people. And I think that was just a step too far. And then I think the whole environment turned against Maradona, and he did really work hard at his fitness to get back in 1990. But it was it was like something out of a movie, and obviously they did make the movie on it. That this guy who was an almost religious figure in Naples would end up knocking Italy out, and he was the guy who scored the last penalty for Argentina before Serena missed, and Goycochea, reserve goalkeeper, saving it.
Yeah, and Maradona didn't do an awful lot more bar score his penalty, which, a player of his ability you'd expect him to do. Yes, it was almost like a knife in the back for the southern Italians. And, we have these notions of countries like as if, it was always this country was there or that country was there. Like, what was the line from the Italian premier at the time? We've made Italy, now we must make Italian. So Italy's a complex country, and Naples would very much be seen, be looked down upon by many of the northern Italies and the more kind of well-off areas. And that's why the Maradona story in Naples had so much kind of romance to it, because he was going back, having come from such poverty himself, and going to be a hero, basically a god. My friend Mark Doyle, who works for Goal.com, he's based in Italy. He's been to Naples, and he sent me a few photos recently. His image still adorns walls all over Naples, despite the fact that we're now 25, 30 years on. And he was an absolute hero that went way beyond football, and what he did there, was more than any politician could ever do in a very, very complex city with real raw emotion. And the very fact that game then took place in Naples, and I kind of agree with you, John. I think when you say he was never the same again, having watched the movie, I'd speculate that was something of a turning point in a life that was probably very much going the wrong way as it was. And I found the Maradona movie, I remember watching it. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. It was like the weather we have today. And it came out of, it's always strange going to the movies in the middle of the day when it's baking hot outside. But it came out into this kind of beautiful Dublin day, just kind of reflecting on what it was like for him to be playing in Naples, to be an absolute hero, to be playing on days like this where, the world was at your feet, and ultimately how it just became so tragic in the end. But I do think mentally that would have hurt him a lot, because he was an absolute hero, yet he was probably spat upon by a lot of Neapolitans after that for what he did, even though all he did, as far as I'm concerned, is score a penalty for his own country.
Well, he shouldn't have done the call to arms before the game. That was a mistake. But the guy is only a human being, and people always thought Maradona was this kind of, cartoon character almost. Oh, he just do amazing things on the football pitch, win the World Cup on his own. But he was a human being, and the fame and the pressure that was on him was just off the charts. And also, as well, lads, the pressure on Italy in their own home country got to them. Scalacci didn't take a penalty in the shootout against Argentina, and the manager didn't play Baggio in the semi until he brought him on.
Yeah, there's a lot in the Italian story, and we all know with all these tournaments how the host becomes such a central theme. And we spoke about Brazil last week, and we've discussed in other times, we've seen France in '98 and how powerful a force it was. But it does seem with that Italian team, and the manager at the time was actually regarded as quite a positive attacking coach. Yet he obviously had an issue with the selection of the attacking players. I mean, there was a few other teams, though, that Italy, Argentina. We probably should, before we move on from Argentina, mention Guy Cachea as well, the goalkeeper, who I do remember. I do remember, the number one broke his leg, didn't he? Or he injured himself.
Neri Pompido against Soviet Union, yeah.
Yeah, and Guy Cachea, who was playing in Colombia at the time. He was a part-time male model as well, I think. And I sort of do have these vague memories, again, of the other games in the tournament, because I remember Cameroon beating Argentina and that being such a thing. But this number two keeper almost just becoming this star. And almost, I suppose you had two of them in that game. You had Scalacci, who was an unfashionable, sort of unconvincing, reasonable top-level Italian striker, and Guy Cachea, again, who was playing in Colombia, which wouldn't have been sort of a standard thing, although probably not a lot of money knocking around Colombia at that time. But they somehow became central characters, and this is what happens with these World Cups, that people who, if you were to maybe at the start of the tournament write a list of 100 names and you think these people might become a big part of it, they wouldn't have registered, and yet they were. But that is true, that Italian team, and I guess we see so much of the English world and how Stuart Pearce and Chris Roddle were remembered for penalty misses, but presumably for Donadoni and Serena, for them it was something that lived with them for some time.
53106 for your text messages. I was in Naples last year. Maradona is still adored there. That is from John in Waterford. I suppose time is a great healer, isn't it? A great show, lads. Italia 90 got me into football. I was 9 at the time. Remember watching the Italy game, which was on a Saturday night. Started buying Roy the Rovers magazine afterwards, playing the game, watching the live games. RT used to show prior to the Premier League. Italy in the stadia seemed so magical. Little sad to see the Italian game decline and some of the stadia ageing, like at the San Siro. First of all, Paul Mcgrath playing midfield for Leinster Senior League against United Churches League in Bluebell United's ground. Charlie Walker was also there, and a couple of months later, Mcgrath was playing for Pats.
That was the day, actually, John, that was the day that Brian Kerr and Charlie Walker basically picked him out, because Brian referenced that in a piece that he was just like, I don't know what he said, who's this big black kid, because he was basically head and shoulders. So the texter, that was a great day to be watching a game in a field in Dublin.
I'm a Pat supporter. He was so good, Mcgrath. It took us a while to figure out what his best position was. He eventually settled in a centre half, but he could play anywhere. Centre, forward, winger, midfield, you name it. That is from Ray Dixon and Stony Batter. Me and a friend in London working for the summer after the Leaving Cert during Italia 90 stayed in the nurse's residence. All the English supported us against Italy. Couldn't understand why we all cheered for Cameroon against them. Would we still support Cameroon today? I think I know the answer on 53106. Lads, to me, the World Cup from an England perspective was all about Gascoigne. Bobby Robson was slow to warm to him, but once he did, he got in the team and he played brilliantly in that World Cup.
Yeah,
I
kind
go
of.
on, Johnny.
Sorry, Dan. Sort of looking back, England had some very good players, in fairness, in that World Cup, and the Platt goal against Belgium. You know, if you look at the great volleys in terms of a volley that was kind of out of the ordinary. Van Basten comes to mind straight away. Di Canio for West Ham comes to mind. That goal from Platt, the way he kind of angled, you know, his foot around it, and Jordan Flores' goal for Dundalk, I'd have to say, is probably quite possibly the best volley I've ever seen for its ingenuity. But that Platt goal, Platt looked to be brilliant in that tournament. But the Gaza situation, you know, the movie as well, the official video, it referenced the fact that apparently the England players cajoled Bobby Robson to bring Mark Wright in, who I remember well, sort of towards the end of his career for Liverpool as a fairly ageing centre-back, but to bring him in as a kind of a holding midfielder, and seemingly Bobby, or Sir Bobby as he would later be known, he acceded to their request and he brought him in and he did a nice job, and then he ended up getting injured and so on and so forth. But Gaza was obviously the fulcrum. Gaza would have his own very interesting career in Italy, obviously, and that just iconic footage of that pleading and imploring with the player that he wouldn't pick up that second yellow against the West Germans. And the funny thing is, Dan, as much as I'm sure you saw the challenge and you're like, oh, that was a blatant yellow card, I felt like watching back in the tournament, there were so many incredibly bad tackles going in left, right and centre that Gaza probably had every chance to think, I'm going to get away with this. But as I did reference earlier on in the show, I watched the documentary on Gaza where he you know, you speak of Maradona, but Gaza had a seriously troubled past in terms of a particular incident early on when one of his kids died, and he kind of felt like personally he never got over that, and he's always obviously been very, very troubled, and that was one of the most tragic kind of sporting documentaries I've ever watched. Apologies that I don't know the name, but
I think it was Keith Sprague, it was the child.
Yeah, and he just has an innocence about him that you could see even in these high pressure games where he was kind of joking with the referee, this innocence that you could only warm to. But one of my favourite parts of the whole movie was effectively that Brahma challenge on Gaza. Now, Gaza seemingly has already been booked. He knows he's out of the World Cup final. Brahma literally goes through him. And this was a tackle that was outlawed, I think, in the 94 World Cup, the tackle from behind. It was an absolute shocking challenge. It was a straight red card all day long. I think he may have gotten booked. But Gaza got up, picked Brahma up off the ground and just got on with it. Didn't even make a big deal. And I was just like, the quality of the man to do that, given that his whole world had kind of fallen apart. And there was that sort of tragic end for the English in that World Cup.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think with Gaza, you know, we spoke earlier about the tournaments, and like, I think Gaza was 22, 23 around that time, and it was probably a perfect, like, you know, so whatever issues people may have, that sometimes they just get into they get in vogue in that tournament, they get into the zone and everything's working for them. And he mentioned it with Scalacci and Goicoechea or whatever, that like Gaza was probably in that too. It was probably the best time of his life to a degree. I know Euro 96 was down the tracks, but even then he'd had maybe a few more trials and tribulations. But you even saw in the semi-final that Gaza early in the game was almost joking, making cracks with the referee, smiling at him, that he just was this, and every story you hear about him, he was this sort of hive of energy, and that he almost got caught up in the moment. And even that the tackle that cut him down, that ruled him out of the game, they never got to play in, was that he'd taken it by 2 or 3 players and just he lost control and he lost it. But that England squad is interesting. As you mentioned, was Mark Wright go back to play as sweeper, actually, as it was. And that sort of changed the tone of it. Just looking through the England squad, I completely forgot that Steve Bull, who was a second division striker it was, played for England in the tournament. Also, a bit of a trivia thing, although if either of you two know it straight away, then it's ruined it. But does anyone know which club provided the most players to that England squad in that 1990 World Cup? Because it's actually kind of a good question. If you know off the top of the head, you can guess it, great. But it's almost a reflection of the time as well.
I'm struggling.
Any
here.
guesses, lads?
Off the top of my head, I'm struggling.
Johnny?
Yeah, I'm struggling as well. I have
Rangers. Glasgow Rangers, would you
Terry
believe?
Butcher, yeah.
4 members of that squad, because they had Chris Woods and Trevor Stephen and Gary Stevens. So probably reflective of the money that even existed in Scotland. So there's all these little things that you sort of you'd completely forgotten. And yet that England team, and they rode their luck of it against Cameroon. Like, you know, again, it's one of those games you have vague memories. I mean, the latter half of that competition was like it was the World Cup of penalties. Like you had penalty shootouts, and then you had games decided by penalties. You had the final decided by a penalty. You had England getting 2 penalties to come back against Cameroon, and the penalty shootouts for both the semi-final games. And this is part of the thing that feeds into the belief that it really wasn't that great a tournament at all. It was just great moments rather than actual great football. And that England team, like they scraped by against Belgium. They were 2-1 down against Cameroon. Yet it probably goes down in the history of English football as a missed opportunity.
That was in Turin, yeah, that semi-final. I was 15, I finished my last exam in my intercert, flew out that night. My father couldn't make it, so I took his ticket and flew out with the lads from Ivy Celtic to the World Cup Italia 90, which we're reminiscing on here at 53106. In our World Cup series, every weekend, we're taking a year at 3 o'clock on Off the Ball Saturday. I turned 7.
We're doing every weekend, John. Where are we going? We're going to end up doing like the 1934 World Cup now in a few weeks.
No, we'll do 1930 because I've actually been to the venue where it took place. So I mean, I've got us 3 minutes on that. We'll just need the other 2 hours might be hard, but we've got 3 minutes anyway.
Was that Uruguay?
It was Uruguay,
yes,
in their host country where they won it. I turned
Uruguay are a team, JD, that I think Stephen Kenny can definitely take a lot of inspiration from Uruguay. Like Uruguay's population is actually a good bit less than the Republic's. A country post-colonial as well, with obviously massive sporting interest, but like totally punched above its weight and is well able to defend as well. Not necessarily a football team that like produce amazing football all the times, but has a very good record in the World Cup. I think that's definitely a country that Kenny will get a bit of inspiration from, surrounded by obviously much bigger countries in South America, but punching way above their weight despite population.
Lads, we got married on June the 30th, 1990. That was the day of the Italy game. One of my best pals, a manic football fan, cried all day. The band drowned their sorrows and couldn't stand up, so they ended up playing sitting on stools. What a day, never to be forgotten for many reasons. Still married, though. That's from John in Limerick. I turned 7 during Italia 90, wore the full Packy Bonner home kit all day, every day. Remember being outraged when Bonner slipped from Schillaci's shot, thinking it was cheating, that he wasn't allowed to get up. Looking back now, I realise it was a bit of a howler. I also got confused in the semi-finals when England were playing a team in green. Joe here in Limerick, 10 when Italia 90 took place, watched every game in Hogan Park, the ex-Limerick ground. Just old enough to remember everything. Great crack before, during and after every game. Probably the only time being picked to be goalie was actually pretty cool. Come on, Packy Bonner. Great show, lads. Painting the garden wall, enjoying the memories. We're living in Munich at the time. There was an exodus to Italy for the tournament. I was working but travelled down for the general game with 6 lads in a Fiat Uno, soft top. Headed back to Munich after the game, a few beers, a pizza, went straight back into work in Munich next morning for 7 o'clock in the morning. Great times. Guys, I think the interesting thing about English football at the time, the Heysel ban had happened. It was 5 years, and it was going to be the first season, the following season, when European football ban was lifted on English clubs. And I think Scotland had a lot of money at the time because they were playing in the European Cup. Graham Souness at Rangers and that. But a lot of things changed after that. Obviously, the tragedy of Hillsborough. But after the Italia 90 for England, they got a lot of confidence out of it, went to all-seater stadiums, and the Premier League then was born 2 years later.
Yeah, it's interesting that I've mentioned this in previous tournaments, that you look through the squad lists and so many players, played in the country that they were born in, and Ireland were always obviously an exception to that. But even the Cameroon squad, I had to look at it just out of curiosity, around half of them thereabouts played in France, but actually a good chunk of them still played their club football in Cameroon. And what it was like for them to go from there to playing in the World Cup quarter-final, you can only imagine. But I was going to say the one exception generally is that a lot of the top players had gravitated to Italy, that even the Germany team itself, like Lothar Matthäus, Klinsmann, one or two, Rudi Völler, I think like 4 of their stars were playing in Italy at that stage. And we probably all remember the Monday nights or the Saturday mornings watching the Italian football, and that was the glamorous place to go. And yeah, Italian football at that time represented modernity, whereas now, the stadiums, even some of the chants in the ground, it's almost like it's back in time. It's almost rooted in that era, whereas English football went from strength to strength. As much as England themselves didn't qualify for the next World Cup, of course, but by then the acceleration of club football in England meant that within a decade, a lot of these players were playing in England. And yeah, that is a point in time, as you mentioned, coming off the back of Hillsborough and Heysel, and again, a sort of a dark era for football in England. And I mean, I know that we have our own sort of songs and stories of Italia 90, but England probably have their own as well. But like World in Motion and one of the great songs, by the way, and the World Cup songs, and even and the John Barnes sort of rap diversion within it and so on. But also like how they got caught up in the moment, but maybe used it as a catalyst to improve their game completely.
New Order, number 1 in 1990, World in Motion, yeah. Because I was in England for Euro 96 and it really took over the country. Like, it really was pretty amazing. And even last year in England, like, it just stopped the nation in England when they reached the semi-finals, or a couple of years ago.
It reinforce the significance and the importance of the host nation? And, going to a place like Brazil, absolutely football crazy country, massive country that could benefit from development. And, I was just saying this to Dan off air, like, compare watching that Italia 90 to what Qatar is going to be like with these stadiums that are clearly never going to be full afterwards, played in winter because of the heat. And just, so, as much as I absolutely would love Ireland to get there, no matter how good that tournament is, it's going to be extremely tainted.
Well, it's tainted by the way it was awarded, but also by Qatar doesn't have any football legacy. Russia, to be fair to it, did have it through the Soviet Union, did win the European Championship. You had players like Lev Yashin, you had good Russian teams, and Qatar doesn't have that. 162 yellow cards in this World Cup, 16 red cards, 18 penalties awarded. The Germans, it's funny, like, they didn't come into the tournament as favourites. The Dutch would have been probably more favoured, but the Dutch didn't really seem to jet at all, and that happens sometimes with the Dutch in tournaments. Leo Beenhakker was in charge, led Real Madrid to 3 La Ligas in a row, but it didn't really work out for the Dutch. Van Basten was flat, Hullet had injuries, and it's funny, like, you've got Hullet, Rijkaard and Van Basten on top of the world with the AC Milan, but they couldn't do it in the World Cup, and they really should have done better in the group, and that's what cost them then, because they drew lots with us. We got Romania and they got West Germany.
Yeah, they got shafted, really, as I said earlier, by the maybe they should have pushed harder against, but I don't know what that would have affected things. Obviously, it would have left Ireland in a bit of bother. But yeah, I mean, it is striking, as I said. Yeah, and thinking about the great players being in Italy, of course, the Dutch were the advertisement of that, and had been such, I suppose, thrilling or worthy winners of Euro '88, or maybe we're just thinking of the Van Basten volley and some of the great moments. But the fact they ended up in that heavyweight game in the last 16, you had Argentina and Brazil meeting early, that some teams had to go. But yeah, we don't really talk about maybe that German side with any great affection. I mean, you'd assume for them, I mean, they'd lost the previous 2 World Cup finals, so there was a certain amount of pressure coming onto them when they went all the way. And they were probably still, as we mentioned earlier, that Argentina team was probably hard to warm to. So, I do recall the early stage of Germany in that competition, the group stage, scoring a lot of goals. Lothar Matthäus was in his pomp as a number 10, scoring some amazing goals. I think there was the one, I think I might have shown it in the video. Was it against Yugoslavia or something? I just seem to recall watching that at the time. And there was probably a sense, it was a combination of last chance saloon for some of them, and others coming to the ball. But of course for Germany as well. I mean, a fascinating time in their history. Like, what was that line from Edward Woodward again in the clip that Stuart Pearce could have taken down the Berlin Wall himself, with a tackle? Like, it was a time of massive change in Germany too. And you'd assume for the boys of 1990, there's a sort of a legacy that's attached to that's tied in with a social thing as much as a football thing.
Unification, yeah.
If you looked at it, JD, as well, like this, it wasn't that long since World War II, so like 45 years later, and you definitely felt from the Dutch-West Germany game that there was a huge, like, national kind of investment in this, and that they really did hate the team they were playing. And Chernobyl wasn't all that long before that, a few years before, and this would have been the last time the Soviet Union, as it was in a World Cup, because it basically, probably partly because of Chernobyl, but it broke up shortly after that. Incredible time in the world, got into the 90s, and that West German team, I think they drew confidence as it went on, particularly from beating the Dutch. They had good players, might have been a great team. I think the narrator said they were 4th favourites going into it, but that was a compelling time to be alive, and like, what a time of national flux in what we now know as modern Germany.
Yeah, I'm just checking the date. I think it was the 3rd of October off the top of my head in 1990 when Germany was reunified after the Berlin Wall fell in November 1989. And they good players. Like Klinsmann's performance in the last 16 game against Holland is a textbook on centre forward play. He was incredible. The Voller was sent off early on, Rijkaard, and it was just really ugly, the spitting and everything. But Klinsmann ran his heart out and won the game with a goal, and then Brema added a second one. And the Dutch just didn't show up. It's funny, I don't know why Michels wasn't in charge of them. He was in charge in '88. He was involved in the Dutch Football Association at the time in 1990. But yeah, there was a lot of animosity there. I don't think the Dutch helped themselves in '88 when Ronald Koeman wasn't very magnanimous towards the Germans when they beat them in Hamburg in the semi-final of Euro '88. A lot of history, but yeah, a lot of things. And I don't really remember many East Germans in that. I think Sammer was an East German, but very few East Germans in the West German. Obviously, it was a West German team, so how could there be any East Germans? But after the unified, very few East Germans came through. One I do remember that came through was Michael Ballack, who spent his first 13 years as an East German living in East Germany.
That was the funny thing about the Soviet Union as well, Dan, because I remember when I was in Georgia for the Ireland game, that Traps game that was eventually moved to Germany, but I went over to Georgia that time, so I booked my ticket, and they spoke about the amount of Georgians that played for the Soviet Union team, and the Soviet Union had such a large kind of breadth of proper football countries from which to pull in those days, and that was a massive change, you know, going into the years where it would eventually break up, and you know, you'd have all these really decent football nations emerge, and you'd nearly forget how much in terms of actual playing power like the Soviets had in those days, and Germany then to reunify the two countries is absolutely fascinating as well.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think. I think was Thomas Dahl East German. I think he was one that came in after that Germany, but there wasn't too many. I think you're right. But like the thing about the Soviet Union team, and I know Jonathan O'Brien texted in earlier on. The reason Cameroon finished with a negative goal difference is that the Soviet Union hammered them in the final group match, but both teams were already out. And I think Jonathan was saying that apparently the Russians had been screwed over by bad decisions in their first two games. So maybe they should have been doing better in that tournament if they were able to hammer. Although I think Cameroon were already through, so they were in cruise control maybe. But yeah, I mean it's you know, that it is true that sort of you have the Yugoslavia team as well, and you know the power that some of those teams had in terms of like Prosinecki and various people who obviously ended up playing for different nations as things went on.
Yeah, Dragan Stojkovic scoring against Spain in the last 16, and then they went out on penalties to Argentina in the quarterfinals. I remember Uruguay don't have hurling and Gaelic football. That's from Pat.
I did think of that, Pat, all right, yeah. And I know they've a reasonably competent rugby team, but it is one of our problems in Ireland. But we are, in fairness, we are an absolutely sports-mad nation. That's the one thing. Like, pretty much everyone is into sport to some degree, and that's one thing we have. Like other countries, I mean, if you go to France, for example, could you say everyone in France? Like, I've been in France when the French team have been playing. I've seen a lot of indifference from people. You know, other massive countries have a lot more going on. Sport is massive here, and that's why I think Stephen Kenny will also be enforcing that to the players, that we might be a small nation, but this is a unique nation, and we do have the quality of players as well.
But the thing about Uruguay, and I'm not going to, we might end up needing this topic again, but I said I've been to Uruguay, and like it's obviously a much better climate. It's a lot more of an outdoor culture, and also it's not exactly a massively wealthy country, and you know there's a sort of a certain amount of street football that remains there, and I know a lot of the exploration of the character of Luis Suarez goes down that road, but even Diego Godin and some of the players that actually the brand of footballer they produce might be more rounded, and there is some sort of other factors beyond that. So I think there's a population comparison there, but I'm not so sure if you can really look at them as an example in a like for like, because there's so many different conditions.
I'm getting daydreaming now about steaks in Uruguay on holidays.
What is the steak? Because I've been to there's a place in Ranelagh called the Butcher's Grill, which serves a Uruguayan ribeye, and it's probably the best steak I've ever had. So what's the actual steak like when you're there?
Dan?
It was pretty good, but I must admit, like, you can get the boat from Argentina into Uruguay, and then it's a drive to Montevideo. And it's more from that trip, it's more the Argentine steak that lives in the memory rather than Uruguay in particular. But that's why, like 2030, I know we are invested. Well, I don't know. I don't think the FAI should be spending money on bids now, to be honest. But the idea of an Argentina-Uruguay tournament in 2030, 100 years on, I'm all on board with the symbolism of that. But it also would be a great travel experience for those who maybe start saving now, the way things are going.
How do you eat your steak, Dan?
In Argentina now, you wouldn't want to be going too well done. You're going to be missing out. So I'd be more than medium.
Well done at all.
I'd be medium now, John. Maybe medium rare. So
okay,
yeah.
53106 for your text messages about Uruguayan steaks, Argentinian steaks, Irish steaks, or Italia 90. Back after this.
Tech Talk with Jess Kelly.
On the latest Tech Talk, the CEO of Guaranteed Irish will join me to discuss the importance of digital for our small and medium businesses. We'll hear about the community offering from Republic of Work during COVID-19, and we'll learn all about how technology is helping to save the bees.
Tech Talk with Jess Kelly.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast now, or tune in this evening at 5
on News Talk.
I trust my kids. I trust my instinct. I trust my doctor to look after me. I trust my pharmacist to give me the best advice. I trust my pharmacist when they recommend a generic medicine from Clonmel Healthcare. I trust they're more affordable. And because Clonmel Healthcare has looked after Irish families for 40 years, I trust they'll look after me too. Ask for a generic medicine from Clonmel Healthcare, looking after you and yours since 1970.
It's finally here. The electric car that charges you less. Much less. Introducing the new Renault Zoe, Ireland's most affordable electric car with a range of 395 kilometres, saving you a minimum of €9,000 versus other long-range electric cars. The new Renault Zoe, starting from €26,990. The affordable electric vehicle for every day. Visit your local Renault dealer today. Price excludes delivery and related charges. See Renault.ie.
At Guaranteed Irish, we believe enterprise is at the heart of thriving communities.
Did you know Sudocream's name came from the Irish pronunciation of soothing cream? Still manufactured by Teva in Baldoyle today, Sudocream has been soothing skin since 1931, making it a staple in Irish households whilst also supporting Irish jobs. Guaranteed Irish welcomes companies that are altogether better choices for our communities. So look out for it. GuaranteedIrish.ie. Altogether better.
Hi, I'm Adam Harris of As I Am, Ireland's autism charity. April is World Autism Month, but COVID-19 has forced us to cancel the vital fundraising events we need to support our work. While disruption of routine and anxiety are difficult for everyone, for autistic people they can be particularly challenging. More than ever, Ireland's autistic community needs your support. Please text As I Am, all one word, to 50300 to donate €4 so we can help autistic people through this crisis and beyond. Thank you.
Text costs €4. As I Am will receive a minimum of €3.60. Service provider like Charity, Helpline 076 6805 278.
Next time you're in Lidl, make sure to pick up some Easter goodies for the whole family, like medium Cadbury's, Mars and Nestle eggs at an amazing 3 for €3. Try our cracking selection of deluxe eggs or our excellent Favorina range. And to protect our customers and staff, we've put new safety measures in place in all our stores. Lidl, more for you.
Some of us are anxious. Some of us are learning to video call our grandchildren for the first time. Some of us are clicking refresh endlessly on news sites. Some of us are working on the front line, and some of us are worried about them. And some of us are finding all of this hard. We're all some of us. No matter what you're going through in isolation, let's stay connected and make it through together. Visit gov.ie/together for advice, ideas and support for your physical and mental well-being. An initiative of the Government of Ireland.
Our country remains in lockdown this Easter, but what's the exit strategy? In this week's Sunday Independent, Leo Varadkar talks exclusively to Philip Ryan, answers your questions about coronavirus and tells us what happens next. 10 years after his death, we reflect on the life and legacy of Jerry Ryan. In sport, don't miss Paul Kimmage's in-depth interview with cyclist Nicholas Roach, plus style, beauty and food in Life magazine. The Sunday Independent. Real stories worth paying for, in print or subscribe at independent.ie.
Need next day delivery on industrial tools and safety supplies? Then you need Caulfield Industrial, one of Ireland's largest suppliers. Our nationwide distribution service offers next-day delivery on over 50,000 stock items from caulfieldindustrial.com. We supply quality tools, safety gear and equipment from all the top brands like DeWalt, Snickers, Bosch, Stanley, Baco and more. So whether you're a professional tradesman or a DIY enthusiast, shop online at caulfieldindustrial.com.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Jeff and Heskey.
Off the Ball.
The trophy holders Argentina, Maradona and all opened up against one of the outsiders, Cameroon. A foregone conclusion? By no means.
Ozempic. Oh, he scored! This is a great football and country produce players and go out and play that rubbish. Yeah.
This kick can decide it all. The nation holds its breath. Yes, we're there!
Alf has been deferred and home away has been deferred and we're on the air until 10 o'clock.
You are out.
They've got a term in Ireland that they use like, give it a last jack. We will do exactly that tomorrow night. We will give it a last jack.
Donadoni. Good parry. Schillaci. Dancing feet. Still dancing feet.
It's Bremer for West Germany with the penalty. And is that the goal that wins the World Cup?
And you're very welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. Some memories of Italia 90 there, an excellent montage from Richie McCormick. John Duggan with you through to 5 o'clock in the company of the football correspondent of the Irish Independent, Daniel McDonnell, and journalist Johnny Ward. Remember, our football coverage brought to you thanks to Paddy Power. For more information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net. We've been reflecting over the last 2 hours, special 2-hour show on the World Cup memories today because it's Italia 90 that we're referring to. We're also talking about stakes because Daniel McDonnell was in Uruguay. Uruguay, big Irish connections like Argentina, that is from Pat in Dublin 8. An Argentinian young bull chop, I think 20 times the size of a lamb chop, a roasted red pepper stuffed with baby squid and a baked spud slathered with sour cream. God, it was good. That is from John. You should be eating Irish steak. It's traceable from farm to fork. Uruguay was minted back in the day, but they had a crash and I haven't recovered yet. It was on Italia 90 as well. Lads, great show. I was 15 then, and back then in Dundalk, lucky enough to have the BBC channel in the box as we were so close to the border. My favourite World Cup, my favourite track used for the top 10 goals of the tournament by the Beeb Adamski with Seal Killer. I remember that song. I still get chills watching Baggio go doing his magic against Czechoslovakia with that track in the background. Lads, I was at all 5 games of Italia 90, lived in a Renault 19 and a tent with 2 Kerrymen. Great memories and stories from Cagliari to Rome. Great show. Thanks from Kieran in Galway. Lads, the show's brilliant. Thank you. Out in the garden painting, listening to the show. It's making the painting easy for me. Don't forget to mention Pavarotti and Nessun Dorma. We all bought the CD after the World Cup. We fell in love with Italy afterwards. That was a big thing, lads. Nessun Dorma. Don't think it's been replicated since in that way.
No, I was just going to say that that's a very timely text, that we've done well to get sort of an hour and 40 minutes through it without
easily
referring to that, because and it's bizarre actually that in recent, and we're going back to sort of Stephen Kenny again, but Dundalk in recent times there's a guy I think called David Martin who's a tenor who's from Dundalk who they got into this thing I think in the 2018 season of playing Nessun Dorma before the teams came out. And it ended up with David Martin at one point, I think, coming out and actually performing on the pitch before one of the games. And I actually, you kind of hadn't heard the song in years, but it is one of those tunes again that when you hear it, it sort of brings you back to the moment. I have this image of Pavarotti in the stands at the games and the camera, shooting to him a lot. I mean, am I completely mistaken with that? But it was certainly like the overarching World Cup tune. And I don't know, can you think of any from the subsequent tournaments in any respect that was like an anthem for the tournament? Like I know Euro 96, like for England and football's coming home and all of that, but in terms of a tournament song, I'm struggling. A lot of the ones now are just David Guetta just bashing out whatever he does in his garage.
The Vuvuzelas is the only thing I can think of, and that's a completely different concept since then. That was
there was a little bit of a faux pas from the narrator saying, the Italian coach, if only he had Pavarotti in goal for the penalties, and I was kind of thinking where he's going with that one. But Andrea Bocelli's Nessun Dorma after Leicester won the league, I would defy anyone not to get emotional watching that.
Yeah, and it's funny, like BBC I think was a big thing. I remember having BBC at the time and supporting England in that semi-final against West Germany. Because
JD.
No, but because I'd been to Tottenham. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan since 1986. I'd seen Gascoigne.
800 years.
I know, yeah. Well, I'm over it. Gascoigne and Lineker I'd seen in April that year beating Manchester United, and Gascoigne was incredible, and he ran the show, and Lineker, and both he and Lineker scored. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I'm a Spurs fan. I don't mind if England beat West Germany and qualify for the final, but obviously it wasn't to be. The final itself was really, really poor, and I think it did change a lot of things regarding the laws of the game and that, and Argentina having a couple of players sent off, Monzon and Dazzotti, utterly forgettable, which is a real shame.
Yeah, I mean, the final itself, I mean, I think there was descriptions in the report almost that, like, fans are struggling to maintain interest. But, I mean, it's probably not unusual that a final can be underwhelming. But that one in particular, I mean, again, like, you actually even recall details of 94 and other tournaments. And it was the lowest scoring World Cup final at the time, although obviously, as I said, we had won 4 years on with no goals at all. And the Monzon tackle, which it is interesting. I take on Johnny's point completely, what he said earlier about the laws of the game and what was defined as a straight red tackle in those days. And Monzon's hack on Klinsmann obviously was that. But I mean, we've had a few references. I saw Conan Byrne, the League of Ireland player, mentioning, and a couple of other people did, the Caniggia being hacked down earlier in the tournament by the Cameroon player Singh and Benjamin Singh. And like, I mean, this was GBH was like quite common. So like, the definition of a red card, like I know you watched the footage of the final, and it's just that referee being surrounded by people. Like, it's almost like that Andy Dursa one where the Manchester United players are chasing him. But this was like, the highlights of the final would include key footage of the referee being chased around the place. And I read up on the referee, he was Mexican, and unsurprisingly, he quit top-level football not long afterwards, and he was only 39. So clearly, the experience of refereeing that final probably wasn't a very happy one for him.
Yeah, that's interesting, Dan, because I that was one of the things that really struck me about the documentary, was just the pressure physically and mentally that the referees were under. And I think it's one of the black points of soccer compared to rugby, definitely. Like, this respect the kicker thing, you can debate that all day long in rugby, but rugby players' respect for the referee, to me, is a shining example of how referees should be treated. And we've seen instances in Gaelic games where referees have been the subject of disgraceful attacks. There was even reference, I think, in that documentary to the Colombian League having potentially been stopped because a referee had been shot, I think, or something like that. But
well, that was the Escobar years, I think, as well. So
yeah.
There was a lot going on.
Getting back to the point, like the referee in the final was chased and physically harassed by players, and even the Cameroon goalkeeper, I think that was after the Lineker foul. Like, he should have been given a straight red for the abuse he gave the referee. And I hope that's something that has like gradually changed over time, because if you want to promote the referee in terms of getting into refereeing, which isn't attractive to a lot of people who actually love the sport, they absolutely need respect. And I've long thought like that abusing a referee should basically be a straight red card.
Yeah, and I do agree with you, but I could also understand why it happened. And look, we've spoken across the show about, like, you know, the actual powerful effect that sport can have on a nation completely in its entirety. And even, like, you know, around Naples, and people have watched Diego's documentary, that football is a hugely passionate game that just grabs everyone. And it's probably a reflection of that there's just manic aggression that channels itself into the relations with the referee. And it's a bit different to other sports, but maybe in other sports, you know, there's not exactly that sort of weight of expectation or emotion behind it, and you get caught up in the moment. But there's no doubt, like, it's still something that needs to be addressed, and it does seem in that particular tournament it went over the top. And even you would think a referee showing a zero tolerance approach by maybe sending off someone for a tackle actually inflamed it. But it's very hard to, like, just to instigate a massive cultural change towards an attitude towards referees when we extol the virtues of the passion of the sport in such a dramatic way.
But say that the Henry handball, right? So say if you have like 11 Irish players running after the referee, like you did in the old FIFA game, where you could literally you could run away from the referee. Where you're running after the referee here, right? For something that probably to nearly every Irish player could see. But when you're hounding the referee for a decision that he basically got right, how can you fully believe that you're actually doing the right thing here? And I think that sense of, you can't be giving out about the referee giving a bad decision if you're basically roaring and bawling at him for something you know that he got right. So it was like the Cameroon goalkeeper basically shouting and roaring abuse at him. But the most blatant of fouls of all time. That's what I can never get. Like, grand, have passion, but if it's a foul, it's a bloody foul.
Okay, 53106 for your text messages. Yeah, I think there was pressure. There was pressure on everybody at that time. Pressure on the Argentinian team, pressure on the Germans, pressure on the referee who couldn't handle the pressure. Supporting England, I'm getting a lot of stick for that in that West German semi-final already. Poor sauce, but Spurs and their fans are morally bankrupt. That is from Sean and Kerry. Sean, come on, give me a break, will you?
I admire your consistency, John. Like, it is one of our weird sporting part of the Irish sporting personality is that people can worship players one week and then, slaughter them the next when they put on a national team shirt. So it's not for everyone, but at least you're being consistent. Wow. I actually don't have that much of an issue with it, really, to be honest.
No, I'm not a nationalist, but I'm a Republican. There's a difference. We'll get into that another day.
That's around 2 points, I think,
today.
Pavarotti did actually sing in the town hall in Dundalk when he was a very young tenor from Connor in Dundalk. Great memories from Italia 90 versus Italy, ending with the standing ovation we got from Italian fans as we entered a pre-booked restaurant at about 1 a.m. in the morning. No drink in Rome until after the game, but we had a liquid lunch in a lock-in rooftop restaurant near the Coliseum. What a day. Niall Quinn's header nearly sucked us in behind the goal. We played brilliantly for the first 25 minutes. The boys in green could have been in blue. So exciting. Then the Jack and Charlie walkabout, a team to be really proud of. That is from Jack Gleeson. Lovely text on 53106 here. Nearly out of time, guys. Just folks out there, we've been reminiscing for the last 2 hours on Italia 90 and been brilliant memories and great contributions from our listeners. Great stories, great memories. If you want to check out this, if you've missed any of it, offtheball.com. And the highlight section of our podcasts, and then also on YouTube, on the Off the Ball channel on YouTube. You can watch it, you can listen to it. You can also listen and watch to our interview that we had with Stephen Kenny, the new Republic of Ireland manager from earlier on in the day. We really wish him well. We really hope he succeeds. Stephen Kenny spoke to us for about 20 minutes earlier on today. So please check out our network, offtheball.com, our podcast network, also our YouTube network. Was Nessim Dorma not the BBC's theme tune for that World Cup? I think it was. Yeah, that sparked off the 3 tenors thing. That was replicated around the world. Good show, by the way. I was doing the intercert during Italia 90 and I didn't care about my results. I'm sure you were grand. Lads, yeah, I think this has been great. And as well, we got about 3 minutes left. It was all about Ireland, really, for us. Top of the final, but our final was Romania and then getting to the quarterfinal.
Yeah, I suppose looking back, till the day I die, I'll always remember that tournament and just the passion that it engendered in a nation that basically wasn't used to success. Even, the rugby team wouldn't have had much success. Apart from that, on the international stage, in terms of teams, football was our game. And, we were just on the cusp of becoming a proper good team. We delivered in that tournament, despite the fact we didn't win a game, and we bored a lot of people. We had unbelievable passion. And I think the sad thing maybe out of that World Cup was that, and from Euro 88, was that there was a resurgence, probably a massive resurgence over those few years in interest in football. And unfortunately, it took the League of Ireland. I don't think the League of Ireland has ever actually capitalised from that love of football. And those fans who followed Ireland followed their heroes in that Irish team playing for British clubs, and I was one of them, and I changed to become a League of Ireland fan. But I suppose the unfortunate thing from that tournament was that Irish football, in terms of the domestic game, didn't really benefit.
Daniel, to finish?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Football was massively popular at that stage, but also I think as well, you mentioned Charlie High, he was on the pitch, which is something that I'm not sure if that adds to the legacy at all. But every politician in the world, in the world of Irish politics, wanted to be associated probably with the sport at that time. And that should have been the period where we were building stadiums and completely capitalising on the opportunism of the political sphere. To make a more sustainable football industry. But unfortunately, we got caught up in just the politics of just putting out a good first team, a senior team. And that's something that followed us for some time. And maybe only now, maybe only in the last couple of years, have we really started to build bottom up. Whereas that was a period of top-down success. And hopefully
Charlie was more keen on the horses as well.
Lads, it's been an absolute blast. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, JD.
Danny McDonnell from the Irish Independent and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward there. We've loved having you contribute to our Off the Ball Saturday memories about Italia 90 over the last couple of hours. Check out offtheball.com for that again if you've missed any of it, and the Stephen Kenny interview. Don't forget Off the Ball Sunday tomorrow from 1 until 5 with Joe Malloy in the chair. We'll be joined by the former Republic of Ireland and Liverpool star Jason McAteer for a look back upon his career. There's the paper review, and we'll hear from Frank Nobilo on Golf Weekly. Remember to check out our podcast network as well. Thanks for listening today. Please stay safe. Bye-bye.
He'll give you move with guilt like your eyes.